Whoops. Fucked it up already. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have my good brother here in the temple, the man behind the tribunal and our monthly adventures, good brother Monarch.
Since we started a little late, I will skip random intro. We are talking about Crossroads today, taking a break from Shroud of the Ancients.
We had something else planned originally for this one, but after doing a bit of digging, it was another case of the material is not publicly available unless you sail the high seas. So I had to do a bit of a scramble. And I spun the wheel, and the wheel landed on Crossroads this time around. And
now, this one doesn't load you up at the beginning with a bunch of information on what kind of the game it is.
Yeah. Now, Crossroads...
So, right now, I'm kind of not knowing more than it's some kind of a fantasy setting.
Yeah. Crossroads was a game that was kickstarted and is still currently in development. Technically, it is finished, but it hasn't been fully translated yet. It was kickstarted... So let me see if it doesn't say the creation date, unfortunately. Just that it was funded. So this was a project that I did back, I'd say about a year ago. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the link to the Kickstarter is in the description. If you want to follow along, of course. This came around before late pledges became a more standard thing on Kickstarter. I've only seen that in the last, I think, 2 months. I mean, late pledges have been a thing in the past, but it hasn't been as much of a thing up until recently. Regardless, they were asking for about 50,000 kronins and got 193.7, which, if we convert that to freedom dollars. So, SEK to USD, so they got, 3... I'm just gonna round up to 194,000. $19,402. Which, I'd say that's significantly more than they initially were looking for. But it refers to itself as a tactical and personal RPG on the book. I did back at the level to get the book as well as the campaign setting called Weird Tales of Havsala. And the thing is, this is going to be a lighter one because the PDF is only 11 pages, but it's also deceptive. Because in reality, the book is double-sided. And hold on a moment. My PDF reader is being a bit fucky. So, I will know one thing, I do like the visual design that we've got here. Not just the art, although that is nice, but just the comic book aesthetic that we've got. Obviously, then we go into the introduction. And as an aside, I'm not the biggest fan of spread format. I prefer pages.
Yeah, this makes it a little awkward to read.
Mm-hmm. So, and it goes into what kind of game it is. This is basically the what is an RPG kind of thing. But we start with player characters and then with attributes. Each character has 7 attributes. An attribute can have a score of 1 through 40, though most will have around 6 through 12 for a new character. So we have physique, intelligence, strength, agility, charisma, psyche, and attention. As you could both be poor at keeping attention in real life and in your character.
Yeah.
But then we have the important values. Obviously, these are derived attributes. First is health points. Bit of a typo, but I'll let it slide because English isn't their first language. We've all been through how an RPG works. We know what health points are. Then we have stamina. But before I do, your max HP is equal to your physique times 2. Your stamina is equal to strength plus agility and is used to perform special moves. Your devotion is equal to your psyche times 2, which is used to cast magic. Your carry capacity determines how much equipment you can carry outside of your backpack without over-encumbrance. This is equal to your physique. So I'm guessing we're dealing with a equipment slot setup, kind of like the Black Hack. And then your strength bonus makes attacks hit harder and lets you deal extra damage in combat. This is applied to all attacks, no matter what attribute you use for the attack. It is divided into one-handed bonus and two-handed bonus, based on attacks with a one- or two-handed weapon. And the table to the right shows how you determine these bonus based on your strength. You just simply declare whether you're using the one-handed or two-handed bonus. That is interesting. In a lot of systems, if there's a strength bonus to melee attacks, it's applied universally. You don't get further application if it's a two-handed weapon. If anything, they'll just have a higher base damage instead.
I think Pathfinder and 3.5 are about the only systems that kind of did that 1.5 times bonus.
Mm-hmm. In this case, it's not exactly 1.5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at low strength, the difference is fairly close, but once you get into the higher tiers, the gap starts to widen.
Yeah. They don't give you an actual formula, they just give you a chart.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure exactly how the number got figured.
I would say it's on every other progression. So every 4 points for one hand and every 2 points for two hand, based on what I'm seeing here.
It's almost like it's doubling it,
Mm-hmm.
but every other time.
Yeah.
But we got a nice chart to follow, so that's a non-issue.
Mm-hmm. So, after that we have Fields of Knowledge. These Fields of Knowledge are in many ways the heart of Crossroads. The fields contain abilities you can learn and master, subjects you can study, and expertises that you can gain. By spending points into these fields, you continuously build your own playstyle and create your own combos and synergies. The fields work similarly to skill trees, where you can gain greater effects and bonuses by advancing in the field. There are 4 categories of fields: practical, physical, crafting, and devotion fields. Practical fields contain subjects to study that often give you bonuses to specific roles. The expertises within these fields give you new effects or mechanics to use. Physical fields contain abilities that allow you to use and combine special attacks in combat. The expertises within these fields allows you to get passive effects that grant you an edge in combat. Crafting fields are, well, it's about crafting. These are a bit more advanced than most others, and in return provide deep customization and freedom. Like practical field, they contain subjects to study that enhances your crafts. I do like that I'm seeing skill trees more often in RPGs. So I do find it's a way to introduce variety without being too overwrought. And then we have devotion fields, which are Crossroads schools of magic. These contain abilities just like physical fields, though it is not always so combat-oriented. In the core game, there are 21 fields of knowledge. In this Quickstart guide, there are 4 pre-made characters that you start playing as. However, we have included some of the fields for you to experiment and create your own characters with. When playing the main game, you are free to delve into any field you like and build your character from the ground up. You spend knowledge points into a field to advance within it. A knowledge point can be used in the following ways. So you can master a subject, which gives you a static bonus that concerns that subject. You can master a subject 5 times after you spent a total of 18 points into the same field. You can master subjects within that field up to 10 times. Though I have a feeling spending all your points on just mastering certain subjects is not advisable. See, you can learn a new ability. Gives you a new ability to use in the game. These are most often used in combat. You can master an ability you have, which makes that ability stronger. An ability can be mastered 2 times. After you spend a total of 18 points in the same field, you can master abilities within that field 3 times. Then 1 extra time for every 6 points you spend within that field. I do hope there's a quick reference for that kind of thing. You can gain an expertise. Expertise gives you large bonus or new mechanics that can change the way you use your other abilities and subjects. An expertise can only be gained once every 6 point you spend within a field, and is then gained instead of learning or mastering anything else. Choose personality traits. Choose 4 different traits from the personality traits list. Determine important values. Fill out your HP, stamina, devotion, and carrying capacity. Gain and spend knowledge points. You get 10 plus the value of your intelligence in knowledge points that can be spent on fields of knowledge. Pick 3 pieces of equipment from the equipment tables. Fill out personality. I feel like there should have been a break line here because it goes from how you can spend knowledge points straight into the final parts of character creation.
Yeah, I'm going to say knowledge points and like just a quick step guide for the steps of character creation got put together when they shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm. But after that, we
1
have
through 4 relates to knowledge points.
Mm-hmm.
5 and down are just kind of character creation steps.
Yeah. But then we have a bit of a unified list of all the different expertise and in their respective fields, as well as how many abilities per each when it comes to some of them, like the weapon ones. But there's a pretty robust variety, so even if you're doing mostly a fighter type, there's a good amount of stuff that you can take. I think it's supposed to be read vertically. I feel like this is another case of maybe a break line should have been put in. So, you have physical fields, then practical fields. The way it was set up, one could assume that psychology and combat tactics would be physical fields. But no. And I guess it's not going into devotion.
Yeah, next we'll get into how the actions of this game are going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
So when you as a player perform actions in game, the action is judged by the game master, and they can make 3 different judgments. They can determine that action is a free action, a challenge, or an impossible action. A free action means that you succeed just by stating what you want to do and how you do it. A challenge means that you will have to roll a die to see if you succeed, and an impossible action means that you cannot succeed. You choose if you want to continue with your action after the game master has judged it. That's an interesting way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to players... Like, if the action is impossible, why would your player ever choose to go forward with it?
I think what we have here is somebody declaring what they're going to do, and then the GM deciding whether or not it's something you're going to be rolling for, something you can't roll for, and so on. I get what it's trying to do. It's just a little bit reversed from how a lot of people usually see it. But
because you choose if you want to continue your action after the game master has judged it.
Yeah. I think we all know that one person who, even when the DC is astronomically high, still attempts it.
Yeah.
With the, I got a 5% chance to automatically succeed. And then they roll a 1. Which I'd like to say I feel sorry for them when that happens, but I don't.
Yeah.
But
yeah, then we get what challenges actually are. Mm-hmm. So many times an action will determine a challenge, and during them you roll your dice, use your attributes, and many times abilities and subjects to give you an edge on your roll. During a challenge, you choose the most fitting attribute to base your action on, so strength for lifting heavy, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You then roll a d10 and add the value of your attribute to get your result. If the result is high enough, you succeed. There are 2 types of challenges that present different ways to determine what result you must reach to succeed. These are called performance rolls and conflict rolls. So a performance roll is when the challenge lies in that you must do something that is statically hard to do, such as jumping down from a roof without hurting your back. During a performance roll, difficulty is a set value determined by the game master based on how difficult the action is.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got a table with a variety of different numbers and guides. Performance rolls should only be used when there is a direct consequence for failure.
Mm-hmm.
If the character can try again without any consequence, the action should be considered a free action. I like that little clarification there.
Mm-hmm.
A conflict roll is used when the action is challenging because someone tries to stop you from succeeding. This is the most common type of challenge during combat and social interaction. During a conflict, both parties involved roll the dice. The character with the highest result wins the challenge. If you win, that means you get to complete your action. If your opponent wins, they stop you. If both parties get the same result, the character with the highest number on their die wins. If the dice numbers are the same, the one trying to complete the action succeeds. And for the difficulty guide, we've got fundamental 1 through 6. It seems we're operating on a rule of 6 here.
Pretty much.
All the way up to 48 and higher being supernatural actions.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get advantage and disadvantage.
Yep.
Advantage and disadvantage are effects that you can gain on your roll when performing a challenge. An advantage lets you roll your dice twice to take that. Okay, so it's a common advantage to disadvantage system.
Mm-hmm. And getting advantages and disadvantages is pretty self-explanatory. It is either situational or based on an ability. Not a whole lot more than that. But then we get to combat. Combat follows the same rules as the rest of the game with some additions to create a fair and exciting experience. First, rounds and turns. And here's a big old issue because there's no spacing for several words. And I'm not reading that like I'm Blur from Transformers. But, you know, it's just what a round is and what a turn is, which is going to be self-explanatory. As always, the 5-second rule is applicable. Then we have initiative. So initiative is D10 plus attention and any initiative-based bonuses, and goes from highest to lowest. If there's any ties, the players determine the order of those tied. But it doesn't say that the other side of the equation, the NPCs, roll for initiative. So I think it's a case of the players decide who's going first on their initiative, and then the GM has one turn for everything else. I could be wrong though. Let's see. Then turns and action points. On your turn, you spend action points to perform actions. You get 2 action points each turn, and when you have no points to spend, your turn ends and the next character's turn begins. Actions can cost either 1 or 2 action points, require you to succeed at a challenge roll. Ones that require to succeed at a challenge roll often cost 2 AP, unless otherwise specified or assessed as a quick action by the game master. Quick actions such as drawing a weapon, changing a battle stance, moving, and other actions that does not require you to overcome a challenge only cost 1 AP. Attacking with one-handed weapons is considered a quick action and only costs 1 AP. Okay, so it isn't quite the situation I was fearing, where moving and attacking is heavily discouraged in the name of tactical. I've seen some games try and do that, and I'm not a big fan of it. But in this case, that would only be a factor if you're dealing with two-handed weaponry, it seems, which I'm a little more fine with, so long as there's a significant advantage to using two-handed. And we already kind of saw that with strength bonus.
Now it'll depend on how significant that bonus actually ends up being, but...
Mm-hmm. But
I'm going to guess it's going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, during your turn, you can spend 2 stamina to gain 1 extra AP. This can only be done once each turn. This AP, however, cannot be used to perform any challenges such as attacks. It can only be used for an action that does not require a roll to be made, such as changing a battle stance, drawing a weapon, moving, or picking something up from the ground. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, if I'm running this personally, I'd probably house rule it that you can use it for an attack if you want to, but you're only getting it once.
Yeah.
You know, as a way to give someone a gimme in case they whiff, because, let's be honest, it's RNGesus, you will whiff a lot. Some of you more than others. But then we have squares and movement. Distance is measured in squared. A square is roughly 3 by 3 meters. Moving during 1 AP, you can move up to 2 squares, roughly 6 meters in any direction. When using a battle map or grid, you can move diagonally. With standard rules, only 1 character can be in a square at a time. That's a significantly smaller grid setup than I think we'd be used to.
Yeah.
On the other hand, 3 meters is a lot more than the 5-foot assumption usually. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's around... Yeah, 3 meters, that's just shy of 10 feet. 9.8 feet if I want to be technical about it. So that is more space. This unfortunately also means that a lot of grid maps that are publicly available would need a bit of work. I guess if I were to apply this to the standard grid combat map that you see in the more ubiquitous or litigious role-playing games, I think it'd be the equivalent of a 2x2 box.
You can still only have one character in a square at a time, though, so I think functionally it's going to still work the same.
Yeah, though in that kind of situation, only being able to move 2 squares with 1 AP, so a full turn only being 4, that's a little small.
Diagonal doesn't do that weird movement
No.
and a half thing, though, so
No.
I think I'm alright with this.
Fortunately, that whole 5-10 rule or the movement and a half thing has been largely left by the wayside by a lot of games.
Who wants to do that math? Ain't nobody want to do that.
Not to mention, it never made any logical sense to me why that was a thing.
I understand mechanically, but
many times my students would ask the question, why is it costing me extra movement to move diagonally? You know, I look at it as an artifact. But anyway, with melee range, when using melee weapons, you can only hit opponents within melee range, which is everything within 1 square's distance. With range attack, they have a specified range. Every square further away, you get a -2 to hit, which I'd say has a much bigger impact here because your base die is a D10 instead of a D20. Then you have range attack. Already went through range attack. Then you have throw weapons. You can always try to throw your own weapon or other fitting object. All objects have a throwing range of 3 squares. When you throw a weapon that you are knowledgeable with, you still get the bonuses from your stances and can use attack abilities. Let's see, and then we get to attacking. The weapon plays an important part of every attack, as it is the weapon that decides what damage you deal, which attribute you use, how many AP the attack costs, and which abilities and stances you can use during the attack. You can only attack an opponent in melee range, besides when you attack with a ranged weapon or throw an object. And then we have a sidebar about weapons that they're described in 7 parts: name, type, base damage, effect, attribute, grip, and weight. Name is self-explanatory. Type is what kind of weapon it is and what abilities can be used with it. The types are dagger, sword, axe, polearm, hammer, unarmed, shield, and ranged. And base damage tells you how much damage the opponent takes when hit. An example would be the Bastard Sword that does 1d6 plus 1 base damage. Then effect, if it has a special effect. Attribute, what attribute you're using when wielding the weapon. This is the one you use when attacking with the weapon, as well as if you defend yourself with it. And grip, this tells you if it is a 1- or 2-handed weapon. 2-handed weapons cost 2 AP to attack with, and deals the 2-handed strength bonus and extra damage when you land a hit. 1-handed weapons cost 1 AP to attack with, and deal the 1-handed strength bonus when you land a hit. If you don't use a weapon, your hands and arms count as 1-handed, while your legs and feet count as 2-handed. Why? And weight describes the weight of the weapon. I don't get the distinction when it comes to punching and kicking for that kind of thing.
I'm going to say it's for purposes of damage, because generally you can kick harder than you can punch. So for just the damage chart from earlier from the strength bonus, I think that makes sense, and it's an easy way to handle the power difference between your arms and your legs.
I guess, in the way it was written, it made it sound like you'd be spending 2 AP to do kicking attacks.
I mean, I think that is the intent with how it's written.
Mm-hmm. But then there's defending. When someone attacks you, they will perform a conflict roll against you, that means you will also get to roll, and if you get the higher result, you defend yourself and the attack fails. You can defend yourself either by blocking or dodging. Some reactive abilities let you make other choices, but blocking and dodging are the basic styles of defense. So for blocking, use your weapon or shield and the attribute that weapon is based on. This cannot be done with attention-based weapons. You can block either using unarmed combat, choosing either to use your strength or your agility, but this can only be done against small weapons such as daggers. Small weapons always have the effect description small weapon. For dodging, use your agility as your attribute during the conflict roll. It is always your choice if you want to make a dodge or block. And once again, we have a case where the dodge and blocking is something that you always have. It's not some limited use thing.
Yeah. We've seen that a weird number of times.
Mm-hmm. But there is a catch to doing it multiple times, and that's through weakened defense. Every time you block or dodge, you get weakened defense, which gives you a -2 the next time you use the same type of defense until the turn is over. If you have blocked 2 attacks in the same turn and you want to block a third attack, you get -4 to your roll, for instance. When the round is over, the weakened defense is reset and you can block and dodge without any penalty again. This effect applies to all your opponents as well. This means that you can easily be overwhelmed when fighting several opponents alone, and that you can quickly take down dangerous enemies by working together. See, this I actually like.
Yeah.
One, it's a double-edged sword, one that you can take advantage of as much as the opponent can, and 2, it's hammering home, work together, you damn idiots. You're not a group of individuals. You know, because you try and hit somebody multiple times, you're gonna eventually wear them down.
Yeah.
But
yeah, then we got dealing damage.
Mm-hmm.
So when your attack hits, the weapon you use tells you what damage to deal. So it's just excuse me. To this damage, you then add your strength, 1 or 2-handed depending. So just a simple roll, damage plus strength.
Mm-hmm.
Armor and ABS. Armor can protect you from damage through damage absorption. For every ABS an armor has, all damage you take is reduced by 1. If you get hit with an attack that deals 7 damage, and you have an armor that has 3 ABS, you only lose 4.
So standard damage reduction there.
And attribute destroyers. Some attacks can deal attribute destroyers. That reduces an attribute's value until healed by a surgeon. This does not affect any value that is based on the attribute, like if you're max HP or max stamina, but does affect all rolls that use it. An attribute destroyer is described by the attribute it affects and by the damage amount like this. 3 STRD would be a 3 strength destroyer. On your character sheet, you can write down the amount of destroyer your attribute has.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that just reads weird. The amount of destroyer your attribute has.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get 0 HP and death. When you reach 0 HP, all damage you take is instead dealt to your physique destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say that without it sounding weird. If your physique value reaches 0 or lower, you instantly die. If you're
Psyche.
Intelligent. What was that?
Psyche, that's what PSY is.
Yes, I almost said psychic, but yeah, if your psychic or intelligence reaches 0, you also die. However, this is rarely a risk.
You say you almost said psychic, and then you go on to say psychic.
Yeah. I do that.
Yes. Then critical condition, as long as you're at 0 HP, you're in critical condition. Every time you take damage while in a critical condition, you have to roll a conscious roll. This is a special roll that determines if you remain awake or fall unconscious to the ground. During this roll, you roll a d20 and have to get a result lower than the value of your physique. which can be reduced by a Physique Destroyer. If you fail this roll, you fall unconscious. While unconscious in a critical condition, you take 1 damage each turn in combat, and get to reroll your conscious roll once per turn. So that makes Physique Destroyer all the more nasty. Then recover health, then heal destruction. When sleeping a full night's sleep, you gain the value of your physique and HP. If you have full HP, you can then mend 1 physical destroyer for each HP you should have received instead. Physique is the only attribute that can heal from destruction without help. For any other attribute, you'll have to go to a surgeon/healer to mend the effect. And lose and recover stamina. During combat, you'll often spend stamina to use abilities. Some attacks that hit you can also deal stamina damage, which reduces your stamina instead of your health. To regain stamina, you have to slow down and relax. For every AP during your turn that you do not perform a challenge, such as an attack, you regain 1 stamina. This does not apply to the AP gained from extra action. Then stamina and overexertion. If you have 0 stamina, you may still use abilities that cost stamina, and you can still take stamina damage. However, for every stamina that you should have lost, while at 0 stamina, you now take 1 Physique Destroyer. This is called overexertion, and while it can be valuable, it is very dangerous. Remember that your character dies immediately if their physique reaches 0 or lower. Though you do have a way to push it, but don't rely on that too much.
Yeah.
So then we have social challenges. I'll let you take that.
So the social skills can also be just as effective through social intrigue. Social challenges, you gain powerful friends, outwit enemies, and reach goals through diplomacy. So this is how this works, is go for select a goal. When you initiate a social challenge, you begin by setting a goal that you want to achieve. This should be something simple and tangible. So I want them to believe a lie, let me into the castle, various things like that. You then explain your goal to the game master and player involved in the challenge. It is important that everyone knows what you want to get out of the challenge. Telling them does not mean that the character they control knows. So choose a style of expression. So how you express yourself, we've got delight and negotiate. You must give the listener something of value in return for their time. Sympathize and charm. You base your argument on a story about yourself or personal knowledge about the listener. Prove and argue. Base your argument on tangible evidence. Command threaten. Command them to listen by threat or presence. Lie. Each one of these has whatever their defending stats would be. Then we get determine attitude. After you have set the goal, the player controlling the opponent determines what their character feels about your proposal. If they want to do what you propose, no challenge is needed. Otherwise, they can have one of 4 attitudes. The attitude can give the listener a bonus to their roll during the challenge. Uncertain. What is proposed is something the listener does not consider dangerous or harmful to them or their own goals. However, it might be inconvenient. This attitude gives no bonus. Doubtful. The listener can see dangers or have disagreements about what is proposed. However, they are not certain about their own position. This attitude lets the listener roll a d20 instead of a d10. Skeptical. The listener sees a direct danger in their goal or has a strong disagreement about what the speaker is saying. This attitude allows them to roll both a d10 and a d20 to their result. And fixed, impossible. The listener may judge a goal to be completely unreasonable. Their character's attitude is fixed and cannot be affected by the goal, and it is then considered impossible to succeed in persuading them. That feels like a bit of a jump from skeptical to fixed, but...
Yep.
Yes, if a challenge is impossible to complete, this is made clear before any dice are rolled, and other alternatives for the challenge may be suggested.
Pretty much. Yep. And I am glad that we have an actual social setup here, since I mentioned this in my interview yesterday. But a lot of games treat social roles as or treat social encounters as just a one-off role, and then that's it. And obviously, that's not the case here. But then we have relationship. The final thing to determine before the roll is the listener's relationship with you. This can give you advantage or disadvantage on the roll, and some expertises can affect and be affected by the relationship. In a social challenge, the relationship between you and the listener can either be friendly, neutral, or hostile. It is always the listener that determines the relationship. A friendly relationship means that the other person likes you and or cares about your well-being. With a friendly relationship, you get advantage. Neutral is one that you have with someone who's never met you before or has no direct opinion on you. A neutral relationship does not have any effect on the challenge. And a hostile relationship, they don't like you, they might see you as your enemy. In combat, all opponents are considered hostile unless otherwise noted, and you gain disadvantage. If you fail a social challenge where you try to influence someone, you do not succeed, and trying again gets harder. If you want to try again, you can do one of two things. You can either press on or change the expression. If you press on, you may roll again using the same bonuses and expressions as you did last roll. However, the relationship between you and the listener drops. Friendly becomes neutral, neutral becomes hostile. This cannot be done if the listener is already hostile. It is the listener that determines this drop in if this drop in relationship happens only during the roll or if it's a more permanent change. If you change expression, you may use a new expression, but the listener's attitude becomes worse. Uncertain becomes doubtful, and so on. So then, a step-by-step. You choose a listener. You determine and describe your goal. You choose your expression, i.e., the listener chooses to protect himself with psyche or intelligence. The expression you choose may limit their ability to choose. Determine attitude. What they think of the proposal presented. Attitude determines which die the listener rolls during the challenge. Uncertain, no effect. Doubtful, they roll a d20 instead of a d10. Skeptical, they get to roll a d10 plus a d20. Then determine relationship. The listener chooses the relationship they feel suits the situation the best. The relationship can give you advantage or disadvantage on your roll. Then roll a conflict roll. If you win, you achieve your goal. And right after that, we have this lengthy list of character traits.
Now, the traits themselves aren't that expensive. They're simple stuff like fearless, +1 on fear rolls.
I would say these would be the equivalent of the traits that you saw in the race creation setup in the Advanced Player's Guide for Pathfinder. In your case, because these aren't all that major in terms of what you'd get. In fact, these would probably be racial bonuses in other games.
Yeah, nice to have. I like minor little bits of customization. They may not be huge swings or huge things, but just little ways to tweak stuff.
Yeah. Which is probably why they're so cheap to get.
Yeah.
But that is all of that. And unfortunately, it appears that the Quickstart guide that I have does not have the sample characters, which is odd. I thought I had addressed that.
Yeah, because it mentioned that there would be some, but we don't have any to look at on this particular PDF.
So what I'm going to do is go through the links to see if I missed something. I will note that on the page itself, on the Kickstarter page, it does go into some of the devotions. For example, you have Blood Oath, where you gain 1 devotion for each damage you take, and you spend devotion to heal allies and punish enemies. Flame Seeker, you gain 1 devotion every time you use a point of stamina, and it's mostly offensive and destructive abilities. Inkbound, you lock devotion away in symbols and runes. You can gain devotion through study and travel. Soul Guide, gain devotion through shrines and offerings. And it appears that there are a form of races within the book, but I need to.
I'm trying to see if I can find just like an image of one of the character sheets that someone's uploaded,
Well, I have the.
but I got nothing.
I have the I have the blank version of the character sheet. I will send that to you directly. Give me a moment.
There we go.
So that is what the character sheet looks like.
Now there are a couple random things on here that wasn't really covered in that.
Yeah, let me.
Like, I'm going to take a guess and say Folkkin
That is
somewhat race equivalent.
Yeah, that was brought up on the Kickstarter page itself.
Yeah.
And there on the page proper, there are previews of some of the fields. But yeah, it is a bit disappointing that that the sample characters aren't in that.
Yeah. I'm in a position right now saying, like, I do like a number of the things we went over. Like, I like how they handle the defenses not being your action points, but just the accumulated attacks end up mattering. There's a lot of little interesting things in here, but I don't know if I have enough to really give this any firm thoughts at the moment.
And while there are
I feel like this quick start that you sent over is incomplete.
This was made right around the time that the Kickstarter was being done, so it's far more of a preview of how the system works than anything else. There are some chapter previews as well as a preview of some of the fields. You know, for example, this is what the sword field looks like. I'm gonna send that to you, so you can kind of see what's going on here. So even though they described it as a skill tree, I mean, it is somewhat that. It does look like. I'm not sure what the number is there for, but I do appreciate that it's separated between stances, attacks, and reactions, as well as expertises, which are more passive effects. But I can
There are
see.
things about the combat system I'd want clarified in relation to some of these, like, say, Wind Cleaver, your opponent gets a disadvantage on dodge. Is there a reason they're not just going to pick block?
I think it. I think that approach there is almost meant as a way to force them to pick block, if they can. Though,
Which is kind of going to happen if you're hitting multiple attacks. But see, that's the thing. Like, I do like what we read.
yeah,
There's some interesting stuff here. I like these big lists. I just don't feel like I have enough to really put any of this into context.
for me, I think what this really needed is something to. I don't want to put this. I won't say a full-on sample adventure, but a sample encounter at the very least, because what we have is essentially a vertical slice of the core system, which is. I will note that it does seem that unless I mistook something, I didn't see any sort of um, conversion between attribute rating and the like. I am also curious on the whole training part. Like, do you have the option to directly train your abilities? As well as stuff like inspired. There's definitely some potential there, but we need to see more. And while there is some stuff with the beta that's out there, unfortunately a good amount of it is in Swedish, so I don't have much use for it. Because, well,
if we
I don't
had
speak
the whole
language.
book here in front of us, like the full release, I think it's supposed to be out this year, isn't it?
It is. This is another one of those cases of it's out when it's out. There were some delays.
But yeah, if we had that in front of us, I'd be interested in giving it a look.
At the very least, I do appreciate that this isn't playing halfsies regarding what sort of setting it is.
Yeah.
Because the art for the Kickstarter, as well as the art for the setting book, very much gives this image of a setup that's leaning into Eastern European mythos. Now because of that, people who want to lean to that, I think, will have a natural fit. I also think that it means that you can't really make the generic fantasy argument when it comes to this particular game. Especially given how the devotions that were in that setting book, that's clearly the magic system for the game. But that also means that if someone wanted to, they could run it completely magic-free if they so chose. But I do appreciate that devotion, the magic system, appears to not be a one-size-fits-all approach. First off, I don't think this game is using any classes whatsoever, and second off, I'm fairly certain that there isn't a dedicated spellcasting tree. I didn't get that vibe. So, which does answer one of the questions of, okay, how would I handle a magicless campaign? You try and do that in more ubiquitous RPGs, and it gets difficult. That's not to say you can't do it, but it's clear that it's not meant for that.
Yeah.
Like, imagine trying to run a low or no magic campaign using Pathfinder. Can you do it? Yes.
Kinda. Like, this is the way I've kind of heard it described. If your system has like unlimited cantrips where you can fire off attacks at opponents, it probably isn't a low magic system. It almost presumes it's kind of a higher level if you're just starting out with stuff like that.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that. I just have frequently voiced my frustration with games that claim, you can use this to run any kind of fantasy, but practically speaking, that's not the case.
It's obviously not made for it.
And the old saying, "Don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining," comes to mind. But I would say I want to see more, and when the full book comes out, I may revisit this, because there is a lot of potential I see within Crossroads. And as an aside, I do like the fact that the hands surrounding the character on the cover kind of setup, where I think each of the items in it is meant to emulate one of the potential expertise.
It is a nice touch.
Mm-hmm. That and the black and gold aesthetic there. It's very nice. But with that said, that is going to do it for this particular episode. We will be back with Shroud of the Ancients next week. And obviously tomorrow, and I see him in the chat. I see Sig in the chat. Him and I will be covering Steam Fortress Victory, because since I started 2 new seasons in the same week, it also means that the 3-in-1 rule applied the same week as well. Of course, the week after, him and I will be continuing our look through Tokyo Nova. And keep an eye out for some stuff that I've got coming down the pipe, especially this April. There's some interesting things happening in the monastery. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.